Welcome to the Do It Best Corp What You Should Know podcast, created for you as a member owner of Do It Best Corp and your employees to share supply chain updates and how they impact your business.
Hello, Nick Tallarico here with Dent Johnson. Dent, how you doing today?
Doing okay, Nick. How are you?
Hey, let's give our members a general update on global sourcing. We really haven't talked about it like this before. We import some products. Our vendors import some products globally, and just thought it'd be a good time to go ahead and talk about that with our members right now. So what's going on in the world of global sourcing?
Yeah, sure thing. To your point, Nick, I mean, we import a certain number of our SKUs, but frankly, almost a third of the SKUs that we stock are in some way impacted by what we're about to talk about. And I've got quite a lot to discuss here, so let me just try to hit the highlights. First of all, if you look at our purchases, we are probably going to purchase about twice as many or about twice as much in terms of the value of goods this year as we ever have before. So we're up 100% in terms of purchases, to give you an idea of the demand just for us. And that's creating all sorts of issues. I'll start with lead times. Most of our suppliers have extended their lead times now of between 30 and 90 days extra on top of normal. That means some of our lead times are actually 8 months.
Wow.
So, and that doesn't include the transport time and logistics time. So you can actually add 2 to 3 months to that to get it to our RSCs. So we're having to make some decisions now, in particular with seasonal products, way in advance. Normally I'd say we're having to order about 3 months earlier than normal. So we're making decisions right now for what's going to happen next April, May, and June. So that's obviously driving a lot of forecasting activity for us. There's an additional wrinkle, just to add to the fun. The Winter Olympics are in Beijing in February of 22. So we're not talking about the Olympics in Japan. We're talking about Beijing, February 22. We've now been notified by a number of suppliers in the north that they're going to be shutting down for 2 or 3 months, in addition to the Chinese New Year. So that's, again, adding to the steps we need to take to increase our orders, to build that safety stock, and also look further ahead. And with all the demand, again, not just from us, but from everyone in the retail industry, all of our suppliers are really running at full capacity just to try to meet the needs. And so that's what's going on the lead time front. On the raw material front, it's really not too different from here in the United States. Just not enough raw materials to go around, huge supply shortages. That's mainly driving a lot of price increases, but there are some availability issues for some of our suppliers because essentially there's just not enough raw material in China to go around. So that's driving pricing. On the freight side, we've talked a lot about that, but I'll talk about freight and ports. First of all, the cost of a container, we were probably running about $1,800 per container a couple of years ago. Right now, that's at about $5,000 per container to get it over across the pond. But if you're going to guarantee that it comes, instead of continuing to get pushed back, you have to put another $2,000 with that. So $6,000 or $7,000 to get a container across the pond these days. Vessels are full, and we've talked a lot about what's going on at the ports. But to give you a feel for it, still major container shortages as a result of all the ships sitting off the port here in the U.S. So, we've talked in here about L.A. There's about 30 vessels out there right now. That's a little bit down versus a couple of months ago. But if you figure each vessel has about 12,000 40-foot containers equivalent on it, that's about 360,000 containers that are stuck off of the coast of L.A. alone. Not even talking about the East Coast, which is a bit of a similar situation. So there's a lot of container difficulties. Those can't get back across. A new problem just in the last few weeks, one of the main ports in China, about Yantian, they, I think, flow about a third of our goods through that port. That port is basically closed or mostly closed. And we got a report just a day or two ago that it may be fully closed. So that's a major issue. So
why
now,
is it closed?
It actually had a COVID outbreak of all things, and so they shut down. And we think they're maybe operating at about 30%, if at all. And that's going to create 2 to 4, maybe 6 weeks of delay in and out of that port because they now have 40 vessels just trying to get containers back into China that are sitting off the coast, can't get into that port due to the capacity concerns. So again, major logjam on this side of the ocean and on the other side, in particular at Yantian. So that's, really driving a problem that we don't need, in particular because March, for example, was the highest number of containers that have ever been sent from China to the U.S. all time since they've been tracking it over 20 years. And April was higher than the last year. May certainly a lot higher than last year. And basically 2021 is going to be a big year. It's going to far exceed 2020, which was actually higher than 2019. So huge demand, big lead time increases, raw material problems, and obviously the freight congestion that we talked about in addition to the cost. So not a lot of good news. All that is driving price changes on our end. I would say about a third of our items have already seen price increases, but our members could expect that a lot more price increases to come on the items we haven't touched yet. So that's about it, Nick. All the good news I have on global sourcing.
Well, there was a lot there, Dent. Really appreciate the information. Members, what we would ask you to do, in a few months here, we're going to have our first live in-person market, Dent, in what is it, about 2 years almost, a year and a half. Really excited to have everybody there. Take that opportunity to place your market and seasonal buy orders to reserve inventory on the foreign source product. We would say any pre-planners that come out in the future, make sure you utilize those to place your orders. You can always utilize future reserves as well. Dan, I want to hit on price changes one more time just to reiterate it here. But like you mentioned, we are going to continue to see price changes on products. We would encourage you to stay on top of your item maintenance in your store to protect your margins right now. And then, of course, you can always stay up to date on the merchandising update on the departmental pages as it relates to global sourcing. Thanks for joining us in this episode of What You Should Know from all of us that do it best. Thanks for your partnership and business. Stay well.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the What You Should Know podcast. This recording is not to be modified or redistributed without express written consent from Do It Best Corp.